Okay, in this one, I'm going to show you how I made this fractal temple render right here. So I'm going to start with showing you the actual fractal setup, which is surprisingly very easy in a minute. Then we'll go to the lighting and just the overall atmosphere. I'll show you a cool technique for the clouds as well, which is also a very simple, situational, but simple setup. And then I'll also show you the trees and foreground that I'm using and just how I'm dealing with all that. So let's get started with just the main fractal, and then we'll move to the rest of the environment in a minute. Okay, so what's happening here with that fractal is if you just Google, I don't know how to say this, but Sierpinski fractal, you'll see this triangle and you'll see kind of this chart showing kind of the different stages of it and how it's repeating. What we want to do in 3D is get one triangle and stack it, just duplicate it into a bigger triangle shape made out of 3 smaller triangles. That'll give you one empty one in the middle. Then you can use that, treat that as one base layer triangle block again, and just repeat that 3 more times. Then you can repeat that as the next base triangle block that gets used, and you can just do that again and again and again. So in 3D, that looks like this. I'm actually going to add a cube, and I'm going to move it up 1 meter just so it's kind of level with the ground. Let's take the top face, and I'm going to hit S, Shift Z to move it in this way, and I'm going to hit 0 to just snap it all to the same exact point. Okay, so we have a bunch of overlapping vertices right here. You can see if I click it, it's not really highlighting it because there's 4 of them in one spot. If you just go to X-ray mode, select these top ones, hit M to merge, and we'll just merge at center. So now there's only one vertex at the top here. What we're going to do is take that. I'm going to hit Shift D, and I'm going to move it on the X axis. I can just hold Control to snap it here. And then I'm going to go to front view, and I'm just going to do that shape that we saw in this diagram here. So we want 1, 2, and then the third one on top. So duplicate and just put it right there. Okay, so that's the basic outline of what we're going to be doing. If I just go to side view and then just place this, I'll just, again, hold Control so it snaps and move it over to there. Let's just fill this in by duplicating these and just moving them into place so that it actually works in 3D and in 2D. So if I go to front view and side view, it's looking the same. It's not quite lining up 100% perfectly, so I might have to adjust this. Just move it to there, and that seems about right. Okay, so what we can do now is if we look at the structure here, we have, again, 1, 2, 3. We can just use this as the next one. So I can just take all of this, let's duplicate, and an easy trick here to get this to snap and line up perfectly instead of holding Control, because eventually it's going to get huge. I did a shortcuts video recently, so that's what this is from. So GXB lets us grab this point right here. Then we can just click and snap it to there. So we have R2, Shift D, B, grab, snap. Okay, and it actually put that in where I wanted, but if it wasn't there, we could just, G, Y, B, grab it, snap right there. Okay, so then we just repeat that a few more times. Yes, it's going to be a little bit annoying at first, but it's going to get huge very quickly. So Shift D, Y, B, grab, snap. Cool, we have 1, Shift D, G, or Shift D, X, B, grab, snap. Boom. And it just looks like this. We can just snap it together really quick. So let's take this here, Shift D, snap, move it over, snap, side view, B, snap. Okay, and you can see if you just do this for like 5 minutes, it's going to get gigantic very quickly. What you might want to do at this point is select everything and join it all together. I'm going to just hit Control J. Okay, so yeah, here we could, since they're all in the same object, edit mode, select all, hit M to merge, and then we can do merge by distance. So we removed 7,000 vertices because there's a lot of overlapping vertices here. So that just means like in the corners and stuff, that's all going to be a shared vertex instead of 4 in the same place from each corner of that little mini pyramid. Okay, that's probably enough. If we just go to render view now, it doesn't really look any different than the last one. Kind of does, but at a certain point, it's going to start looking kind of the same. And you have pretty much as close to an endless fractal as you need to have. So you can kind of just do what you want with this from now on. Like you can throw texture on this. You can add whatever lighting you want, join it all together to one object. So in mine, I like duplicated this down and then flipped it by -1 and placed it below itself. That's another thing you can do if you want. Kind of interesting. So yeah, you can just go crazy with this and kind of make whatever structure you want. It doesn't have to be this exact ratio too. Like you can shrink this down to whatever shape you want, and it's gonna look interesting no matter what. I'm just gonna switch to Eevee for a second here and just kind of jump on here. If you go into walk fly mode, it's kind of fun too to do this. If you just hit shift that thing, that's the default shortcut for walk fly mode. I changed mine to shift F though. And then you can actually just walk along here. And yeah, it does get a little trippy when you're just in the middle walking through here kind of. So yeah, you can see this is a very strange technique, but it works. Okay, so if we come back to this file now, this should make a lot more sense as to what is going on there. It's the exact same technique that I just showed. The only difference here is I've just hand placed certain models. Like these are from my free arches and pillars pack. I can link that below. Same thing, some free temples. And that's just all going in here just to kind of help it feel a little bit more like temple or castle kind of human-made structure. I put some trees in there and like just kind of, you know, I put a rock texture on the entire thing. You can see I have these set into like clusters of this size. They're all linked duplicates so that if I put a texture on one, it's going to update on all of them. And then you can see it's not even that high resolution. It's just a rock texture on that. Okay, let's talk about the clouds here. So let me just hide these for a second and I'll set this up from scratch. These are very easy to do. Like I said at the beginning, they're kind of situational and they don't always work. So it's not the ideal solution, but they're a lot faster to render than like a VDB clouds, which if you've ever used that, you know they're super annoying. These are just image planes. Okay, so I'm just gonna hide this and go through this and set it up from scratch. What this is like I said, it's an image plane. So I'm gonna add a mesh plane and I'll just scale this up to be very large, rotate it 90 degrees, and let's just get it in the general area we want it to be in. So one thing is you have to have it so that the light is catching it at roughly the right angle. If we look here, I'll go over the lighting a bit later in the video, but we have spotlights from the side coming down from the left side that way. What I want to do is actually rotate this just so that some of the light is getting caught on that plane and it's actually hitting the side or hitting that front face of the plane a little bit. If it's facing this way, it's not going to look as nice as if it's facing this way. So that's all you want there. Then I'm going to make a new material and I'm actually just going to find, that's what this is here, an image of a cloud on a relatively blank background. It can be blue, that's fine, as long as it's a bit darker than the actual cloud, that's all right. So this is actually kind of perfect. It's not ideal because there's a little bit of it getting cut off, but you could download this, put it into Photoshop and remove some of these extra pieces. That would probably be more ideal than this, but I'll just show you with this here because it works. So you can find these really easily on stock image websites. I'm just on Pexels here and I just searched for cloud, and then you just go through and find some images of clouds that are roughly isolated onto a background without anything touching it. So something like this is just absolutely perfect. I can link this exact one below if you just want to use it, but there's better ones out there you could find. And you also want to make sure the image quality is not terrible, so this is good enough. So I just dragged and dropped that image from my downloads folder right into the shader editor in Blender. And then I'm going to plug that. Oh, I'm actually going to delete this, and I'm going to use two nodes here. One of them is the subsurface scattering node. This is a trick I learned from Ian Hubert's Patreon. He did it with smoke, but it actually works with clouds as well. And I'm going to take a transparent BSDF. So transparent is just fully invisible, and subsurface scattering is going to be, it's mostly used for like sort of translucent things like skin or, okay, so we're going to take this subsurface scattering and transparent and we'll just mix them together. So mix shader node right here, one in here, and then the image is going to be the mix factor. Let's just get more room here. So the cloud image is going into the mix factor. Okay, so this is not connected. Let's plug that into the surface. So there we go. Okay, so it looks like the order is wrong here where the subsurface scattering and transparent need to be flipped around. If you just do this while holding Alt, that'll flip them. So now that looks a bit more correct. Now the background isn't fully black here, and that's why we're getting this square outline. We just need to take a color ramp and isolate that a bit better. So I can put that here. We can hit Control-Shift-Click to visualize what that is doing exactly. And I can just increase this color ramp, the leftmost handle, the black handle, and then just switch it. I can switch this to like ease or whatever, just so that the background becomes black. If we just go back to here, you can see that's probably a bit more reasonable. If you want, you can add another handle and kind of adjust where that's coming in, but you don't need to do that. So something like that is going to be fine. Okay, the only thing we need to do is on the subsurface scattering node, the radius here is going to determine how much of each color is coming through. So it might look a bit weird if these are offset. I believe that's what that's doing. So I'm going to set these all to 1 so that they're all just, if we have RGB set to 1, it's going to be just white. So that's what I want. And then also I'm going to turn up the scale. The reason I'm going to do that is because if we look here, if I just place this into a spot where it's getting a shadow cast on it, let's just put that like right here. So you can see on the shadow, there's an extremely hard line coming through here. We can actually soften that out by just increasing the scale on the subsurface scattering node. And that's going to make it look a lot more natural in the render rather than just like a hard cutoff. Now you still do get a hard cutoff where the cloud is intersecting with some other geometry. So you can see you're getting a hard line there. So you still have to be careful with the placement. But if this is in a shadowy spot, it's going to look fine as long as it's not directly intersecting with the geometry. Okay, so what I might do here is just apply scale, and I'm just going to re-unwrap this with a cube projection, just so that it's not all stretched out and weird looking. And then what you want to do at this point is just place it around and just try and find some good spots for this to be in. It's a little bit tricky if it's like getting a hard cutoff, but I don't really see anything that looks too bad here. We can also make the color fully white if we want. Okay, and the more you rotate it into the light, the more bright it's going to be. There are other setups where you can have it coming from the backside too, but I would say just avoid having it so that the side you're looking at is shadowed in the light, right? If I turn it this way, this side here, the front side, is now in shadow, and it's only the back side that we're seeing. You want to have the bright side pointing towards the camera and catching the light so that you're seeing that in with it actually getting lit up by the light in the scene. So you just have to figure out some placement for this. Again, this is not ideal because there's a hard line cut off right there, but you can still make it kind of work here by just placing it in the right spots. So I'm just going to start duplicating this and see if I can just kind of figure out a kind of interesting placement of where to put this. So you can kind of orient these any way you want, as long as it looks sort of right. And yeah, that's the technique right there. Let's just render that and see what it looks like. Okay, so what I just did there looks like this in the render. You can see there's some problem areas with like some weird upside down little things or some, you know, JPEG artifacts in here. So obviously you got to be a little bit more careful than I was just there, but you can see that if you place it in the right spots, it can look really good and can even look better than VDBs, which to be honest, I think most of the time just end up looking like fake three-dimensional garbage anyways. So I actually prefer this over VDBs a lot. You can see here too, like you got to be careful with the cloud going outside of the picture, and then you put that on the plane and then it just is like bad. So there's some limitations obviously, but if you do it right, it can look really good. Just for fun, here's a test I did with the original clouds in my original render, plus the test or plus the demonstration I just did in the video, plus another test that I did before recording. So we have 3 layers of these now. And you can see with just a ton of them, it looks kind of cool. So I think this technique actually works really well. If you just use it a lot at once, it can actually look really good. Again, there's some problem areas, but if I was going to go and fix that, it's going to work pretty well. Okay, let's go over the lighting here. So first of all, before I bring in the lights, if we look at the background here, what this is, this cloudy sky back here, this is just an image of clouds. I believe this is from Unsplash, just a free stock image of a cloudy sky. That is just on an image plane. It's just on a plane, I should say, running into the base color, the alpha, and the emission color. Base color does not matter here, so I'm going to take that out just to prove a point that this is not important. It can just be whatever, black or white. So it's running into the emission color and the alpha. That's it. So it's just, if I just remove this, there's no light, right? That's the background, is just emissive clouds. And the reason we're running it into the alpha, you could also run this into the emission strength. The point here is that if I take this out, you can see it's kind of just, if it's going to only the emission color, it's a bit washed out and just like overpowering. So you want to have some of the brightness values of the image going into like determining the strength of how bright this actually is. And there's two ways to do that. There's one of them is the actual transparency of the image, and one of them is the strength of the emission. So I just chose the alpha. So that's why I'm running the color into the alpha so that the dark parts are just kind of removed from the equation. So that's my preference, but you can do whatever you want with that. Anyways, that's the background sky. There's also a volume setup here. I was actually experimenting with all this, which did not even make it. And it's just a regular volume scatter, density very low because it's a giant scene, and anisotropy pretty high at 0.84. So density 0.0005 and anisotropy at 0.84. Okay, here's why that's important, right? If I start bringing in the spotlights, which when I'm adding the lighting, I'll just show you like kind of the main setup here. There's kind of like one or two main ones, and then the rest are just supporting spotlights. So this is the first one I added. This is the main thing that's like doing most of the lighting. Let me just find the other one here. Okay, it's this one too. So these two are doing most of the lighting. If I just start moving these, you can see what that's doing there. So the way I like to deal with having multiple lights like this is I always like to start with one single light and get that one in the main position. It's like doing 80% or a majority of the lighting itself. So when I'm lighting a scene, I'll usually actually turn off all the lights except for the background sky. Maybe in this case I probably wouldn't do that. Then I'll just go in here, add a point or a light, and then choose spotlight. So add that in, rotate this, and then just start cranking up the strength extremely high. So we can just hit a big number there. We can increase the radius because it's a 0 meter radius right now. I could probably put that up to like 20 or something just because it's a big scene. And then in Blender 4.5, we get this exposure slider, which is just a multiplier on this original number. So we can bring that up a little bit. I could maybe make it a little bit blue if I want, but I'll do that in a minute. And then let's just try and zoom out here in the viewport and position this into a place that's going to look good. So I want to have control over this. I don't want to just wash out my entire scene with just light everywhere. If I want dramatic lighting, you have to be a little bit more careful with it. And one really easy way to do that is by just controlling the spot size. So the spot size is just the cone of the light that's coming out, and it's just going to darken the edges of the outside radius until it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it gets to just a little spot, right? That's what a spotlight is. Okay, so what I like to do is just bring that spot size down a lot so that it's actually getting, you can see the dark edges where the light fully cuts off on either side. Then I'll turn up the blend all the way so that it is a nice smooth fall off. So it's not just a hard edge where it's like light, 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 fully dark. You want some blend there. I'll kind of adjust this, and then I'll just go in and find like the main spot that needs to be lit up. Adjust the power. You can actually make it pretty bright when you do this because now the light is so concentrated in this one little area that you're not just washing out the entire scene all at once by doing this. That's how bright it actually is. The brightness hasn't changed. I'm just expanding the cone of light to cover more ground. So that's why I kind of like having this really narrow, because you can use super bright light without it just wrecking everything else. So that's kind of like the range I like there. Then what I might do is change the color and make it a little bit more blue to match the rest of this scene. And right away, that's like 80% of the lighting done right there. Like I'm pretty happy with that, even though it's just one single spotlight, just really bright, really soft in the scene. The key here is there's the volume. If I just hide this on and off, if we look at the volume, turn that off, look how horrendous that looks without it. It just makes everything look way more epic with volume just covering everything, especially when you have this kind of lighting setup, which is so extreme. And then we have a background sky. Notice the placement of light on the clouds. The light is hitting it from the left side, so we want to do the rest of the lighting from the left side. What we're simulating here is sunlight coming through the clouds, just in a really dramatic way. That's what we're kind of trying to recreate here. So that's why the light direction has to match throughout the scene. So I'll just delete this demonstration light for now. I'll just hide that. And then let's go back to my original lighting because that'll make more sense now. So if we look at this, if we bring this back in here, you can see kind of my logic here, right? I added this one, positioned it kind of where I just did, where it's like, okay, I want this to be the main section that's being lit up. Then once I had that, then I brought in some other ones. So I will just go in, duplicate that to where, a different spot, like literally you can just hit Shift D and then just move it around and just find a different location just like this. And you can see if you kind of have a break between where it's like light goes dark again, then goes light again, that's gonna make it look like there's cloud cover in the way, which gives it this really dramatic look as well. So I'm just bringing in more spotlights. I only like to have one or two of them be really bright, and then the rest of them are going to be a lot dimmer. So if we look at the one that is brought in here on the top, the brightness is a lot lower than these ones down here, right? So if I start moving this around, you can see, is it actually, let's just look at the number. Oh, it's actually the same. Okay, so it isn't even, I guess it's just covering a smaller area. So there's another one that's really bright, but anyways, the rest of them are darker. So if I bring this in again, so spot 7 down here, what's this one set to? I should really adjust this, shouldn't I? So this one's got the exposure slider way lower, so it's like multiple times less bright than this one. This is like a exponential slider here. So this one is a lot dimmer, just covering the background a little bit there. Look how, like, it's not doing that much, but it's just enough to add a little bit there. So if we look at 8 and 9, these again are just dimmer, dropped even to the -1 on the exposure slider, so like pretty dim, just to kind of fill in empty gaps where there's like nothing hitting there. This one, same thing, pretty dim on the very side there. So you can see that's it, right? That's the main lighting done. There's one more with, if we look at the foreground is getting no light except for just reflecting off of the background sky and the rest of the environment. So like there's kind of, it's a little too dark, so I added this area light here, which is just lifting the shadows ever so slightly in the very dark areas there. Again, if I look at that just on and off, that's with it off, a little too pitch black. It can work, but I just wanted it a little bit, I wanted to see a little bit more in that area, because we're in technically a daytime scene, so it just probably makes a bit more sense to have a little bit of light there. Again, I'm not blowing this out like crazy. It's only at 213 watts on a 2x, or not 2x, but the exposure is set to 2. I think it's to the power of 2, but, or actually I don't even know what that is. So anyways, not super bright. It's definitely not like going crazy, but it's just a little bit to lift the shadows there. Again, all that together is what's creating the entire lighting setup, right? If I just hide all this stuff one by one, you can see everything I just went over there is just in that group. If we do look at the foreground here, all these trees and stuff, these are just from Sweeper's add-on called Arborea. I did an overview of that on my channel if you want to see it. I'll just leave a link below to this if you want to get it. It's just a nature add-on, so he's added cliffs and rocks recently too, so that's all this stuff. This is all, I think one of these is Quixel Megascans, and the rest are from Arborea. Same with the plants and trees. Okay, so that covers pretty much everything for this one. It's kind of a weird one to look at in the viewport because there's just a lot happening, but like I said, and like I showed, it's all very simple techniques when you break it down to its fundamental parts. Like this looks ginormous and like it would take forever to hand make, but you saw at the beginning, you just duplicated a bunch and it actually gets made really quickly. And you can use other shapes too. You can do this with cubes or whatever. Like you can figure out other fractals to make very easily. This is just the one I chose and just duplicated it a bunch. So yeah, that's it for this one. Hopefully that was an insightful breakdown. Okay, and by the way, I've actually done a giant update to the Cyber Environments course. I've actually added like 2 times the content now. So that one course now covers 10 different environments from start to finish, as well as it comes with 5 different asset packs that I use in my daily work and a bunch of other stuff that I can't really fit here. But anyways, if you want to go and check that out, there's a lot in there now. So yeah, it's just all under the one same package. So I'll leave a link below to that if you want to go and check that out. Okay, so that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. See ya.